right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is Joe Murphy. I'm a lawyer with Allegheny Immigration Group in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the topic of today's live is the strange and insulting use of language in immigration law. Before I get into that, some few housekeeping matters. We still have a bunch of pretty nice Allegheny Immigration Group swag left over from the Immigrant and International Communities Festival. We have some very nice quality Allegheny Immigration coffee cups. There are some sort of plastic beer steins you can see there. There are company pens. There are t-shirts. And they're a pretty nice quality t-shirt if you want one. There are a bunch of these guides to naturalization left over. If anybody'd like one, just write in and we'll be happy to send that to you. And also there's a good amount of these nice little string backpacks if somebody needs one. You can have those too. So if you wanted to just send me a DM or something, if you'd like some of that stuff, I'll be happy to ship it out to you. We don't keep like a mailing list or anything. It would just be, you can have it. We made that stuff to promote our image and our brand, and if you would take it and use it or give it to needy people, and I don't mean needy in a bad way, I mean someone who might need something. School might need pens. We'd be happy to send that to you. Other housekeeping matters, the October 15th deadline is coming up. We're still getting a lot of calls. We're ready to take your stuff. I'll probably be in here all weekend with my sleeves rolled up and a sharp pencil. So don't hesitate to contact me. You can call me on the office phone, 412-586-4131. Those go directly to voicemail over the weekend, so you'll need to call me on my cell or on WhatsApp, which are the same number, 412-973-3442. All right, so let's get into the subject, the strange and insulting language of immigration law. So we were talking the other day in this office about some promotional materials and even professional correspondence I have with clients that are in one type or another of immigration proceedings. And one of my paralegals noticed that, for example, in a wedding case, I always call the non-citizen a non-citizen, when in fact, the legal term of art, the actual legal term, is alien. And an alien is just not an American citizen. So, but the word alien, you know, it has such a connotation. For years we had all sorts of movies. We had the great intro music here at the beginning of this show from Phil Collins at Genesis. The song's called Illegal Alien. And I think that's the first place we get to, where there's some sort of implication in that language that the person themselves is illegal. Obviously, that's not the case. People can't be illegal, but they can be illegal if they're not allowed in the country they're in, if they haven't been admitted. But even before you get to illegal alien, you gotta look at the word alien, and you think about all of the sci-fi movies, the history, the sinister nature that has slowly come to attach to the word alien. If you think about the movies, and I'll give you a couple clips here. There's the War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise. There's the original movie Alien. And there's all sorts of nasty stuff in the movies. And these are all about infestations and being overrun by some not only otherworldly but hostile creature. These are, you know, so I think the word has slowly, at least in public, like in common use, taken on something of a negative term, even to the point where I myself, in referring to my own clients, as a lawyer, feel uncomfortable using the term alien for them. I don't like to say, okay, Mr. Smith, please bring your alien spouse in for an interview. It seems potentially hurtful, unnecessarily overloading communication with emotion that might be negative. I even had some lives where I used the term early, and when I did these broadcasts, I would talk about aliens and illegal aliens and things. And I remember one of the watchers came in and said, "Do you mean like the aliens in Area 51?" So, I mean, it does cause a lot of confusion, even though that is the exact legal term, alien, and a non-citizen is an alien. So let's take a look at some of this stuff and how the word alien has become so loaded, right? I mean, there's an implied judgment call that this is otherworldly, dangerous. I'll give you an example. If I looked up a list, I think about the top 10 alien movies, and I'll have it right here in the video. If you look at the themes, the top two are Alien and Aliens, and the third one is Independence Day. And in all those movies, otherworldly, quote unquote aliens, and in this case they mean space aliens, are really doing a lot of terrifying and nasty things. In Independence Day, they blow up the White House. So, I think it was the Capitol of the United States, not the White House. But this is the sort of stuff that attaches to the term alien, and it can be hurtful. I try, where possible, in my communications with clients, written communications, where I'm not really required to use specific legal terminology, I try to use non-citizen. But of course, permanent residents are non-citizens. They're certainly much less so aliens than perhaps someone who just walked across the border, or, as in the movies, someone who landed in a flying saucer. So we were talking about that and why I did that, and I started thinking about how many other terms that come from immigration law, not from polite conversation. They come from the law, and the law a lot of times deals with quite impolite realities and sometimes has quite impolite terms for that. No one likes to be called a murderer, but the law has to maintain a name for that thing. And at a certain point, when someone's accused of it and is found guilty, has to brand them as a murderer. Clearly, an alien, illegal alien, undocumented, they're not murderers. It's not even the same, same zip code, the same time zone. But there's a point that the law has to use these things, and perhaps they're not always the best terms to use in conversation, particularly in times like, unfortunately, we're in now, where people are, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of emotion around the subject of immigration. All right, so let's talk about, I got thinking and I said to myself, all right, what other words are running around out there that are like this, that I don't think about, or I just step around in polite conversation and I don't use the exact precise legal terms, even though I'm a lawyer. So here are some of the ones. I just wrote down some notes. Obviously, alien is the first one we talked about. Illegal alien. You're not only an alien, but you are, by definition, illegal. That's the implication. Of course, they're talking about the nature of your presence here in the United States being illegal, not you as a being. We don't make people illegal. The terms immigrant and non-immigrant even have kind of taken on a negative connotation after years of propaganda, negative portrayals of immigrants. Border jumper. Of course, there's a word that has been adopted lately in quite a few quarters as an effort to avoid some of these value judgments or smearing effects that these words have, and that word's undocumented. Believe it or not, undocumented is kind of triggering to the more conservative people that talk about immigration, in the sense that they feel it's a nonsensical euphemism. But that word has also got a triggering, upsetting, irritating, and potentially communication efficiency reducing capability. And then there's some other smears like, oh, that's just a green card marriage. They talk about whether some people are admissible to the United States, as if we're some fancy club behind a velvet rope you could be admitted to. And the last one I want to talk about in terms of emotionally loaded, potentially hurtful legal ideas that are referred to in immigration law is what's called a qualified sponsor. All right, and then I'm going to take a short break here, and we'll get into those one by one after the break. This is Joe Murphy with Allegheny Immigration Group. I have an important announcement for you. If you or someone you know is in a marriage between a citizen and a non-citizen and they have not yet filed for a green card, on October 15th, new rules are going into effect about who can become a citizen based on marriage. Under the current administration, we can be pretty sure it's not going to get easier. By some accounts, the citizen spouse may have to show up to twice as much income as they had in the past to prove their ability to support the spouse. So it's important we get these applications in. Let's get those applications in. My office number is 412-586-4131, and my WhatsApp is 412-973-3442. I know cost is always a consideration. Through the 14th of October, we're going to handle a wedding package for $500 down and $1,000 total. That's $1,000 for us to apply for a green card through marriage for you under the current rules between now and October 14th. Again, if you want to get in touch with me, my office is 412-586-4131. My WhatsApp is 412-973-3442. Okay, so before the break, I was talking about some strange and unusual words that immigration law uses to describe various things and how they can be hurtful or even insulting. And again, I had that list. The list was alien, illegal alien, immigrant, non-immigrant, border jumper, undocumented, referring to someone's marriage as a green card marriage, talking about whether someone is admissible, as if our country was a nightclub, and the idea of a qualified sponsor. Now, we went over alien and illegal alien before the break, and I talked about the history of propaganda, scary movies. I gave the examples of Starship Troopers, Alien, and War of the Worlds, the Tom Cruise film from 2005, which I really enjoyed, but that's irrelevant. Some of the other terms, immigrant and non-immigrant, are interesting because there's the word immigrant that is used in common language, which just means someone who is not a native of the United States. And in immigration law, immigrant and non-immigrant mean different things. An immigrant in immigration law means someone who's coming into the United States to move here permanently. An example of that would be someone who's married to an American citizen coming into the United States to become a citizen and live here permanently with their citizen spouse. An example of a non-immigrant entering the United States would be someone who's coming here for a temporary purpose. And that could be, I give the examples commonly of to visit the Grand Canyon or to get a medical procedure. Students are here for the temporary purpose of their studies, and their period of authorized stay lasts as long as their studies do. But those terms, again, immigrant, so many times has been coupled with other negative terms, unwashed, illegal. Again, this whole video opened with that Phil Collins hit, illegal alien, right? These things are all, I think in the public mind, work together. And it really is almost, those words are so loaded with judgment and potentially contempt that I really do try and avoid using them in my communications with clients. Now, of course, in the legal business, sometimes you have to use the precise legal term. And when that's the case, I do. In the talk I had even today with one of my paralegals, and I asked the young woman to be on with us. She didn't feel like someone who likes to be on camera, so I left her out of doing that. But I was writing correspondence to a client, and I had used the term non-citizen over and over and over again. And this paralegal asked me why. And I said, I talked about how I think of these things as potentially triggering, how I feel that the emotional impact of these terms, potentially negative emotional impact, could reduce my ability to effectively communicate with the client, and how non-citizen and alien, in fact, are almost interchangeable. Again, we have that category of permanent residents who aren't really aliens but aren't citizens either, so that's out there. But in the context of someone who's married a foreign citizen, that would non-citizen spouse and alien spouse really are interchangeable. It's just the one is a better way of communicating. This is Joe Murphy with Allegheny Immigration Group. I have an important announcement for you. If you or someone you know is in a marriage between a citizen and a non-citizen and they have not yet filed for a green card, on October 15th, new rules are going into effect about who can become a citizen based on marriage. Under the current administration, we can be pretty sure it's not going to get easier. By some accounts, the citizen spouse may have to show up to twice as much income as they had in the past to prove their ability to support the spouse. So it's important we get these applications in. Let's get those applications in. My office number is 412-586-4131, and my WhatsApp is 412-973-3442. I know cost is always a consideration. Through the 14th of October, we're going to handle a wedding package for $500 down and $1,000 total. That's $1,000 for us to apply for a green card through marriage for you under the current rules between now and October 14th. Let's get those applications in and swamp the system. At any rate, I was talking with this paralegal about it, and she said, well, that's all fine and well, Joe, but what happens when USCIS starts writing letters back referring to the non-citizen as what USCIS calls them, an alien. And that actually interaction was what led to me making this live, that these things are important from a communication perspective. As anyone's attorney, I have to make sure that they're understanding what I'm saying. If someone comes in who speaks a different language, I either have to speak it or get someone who does to help me to make sure that my client understands. If the client can't understand the information the attorney's giving him, and or if the attorney can't understand information coming from the client, well, that's no foundation for a legitimate representation. The attorney has a duty to follow client instructions and communicate, and if they can't do that, well, it's got to be broken up. So this is one of the ways I handle the emotional static that can get in between attorney and client by using terms that have less emotional impact, less even negative connotation or insulting or hurtful, that really aren't necessary at any rate. All right, so the other one was border jumper, and boy, that really has become something of an issue with the problem at our southern border, and that's referring to people who enter the United States without any permission at all, as opposed to people who maybe entered with permission in the first place, had a visa, and overstayed. One example I give: people who enter with a visa and overstay are more like people who won't leave at the end of the party. Border jumpers, there might be a different analogy for them, but obviously we don't know who those people are, whether we haven't had a chance to check them for diseases. We don't even really know that they're in here. So there's a lot of fear, and that has led to certain segments of the population in politics, in other social sciences and stuff that maybe even have nefarious intent, to devising kind of, again, hurtful and unnecessary things, unnecessary terms for these people. When we talk about people that are unlawfully present in the United States, that could be either category: someone whose visa has expired, or someone who never had permission to enter in the United States. So you have people unlawfully present in the United States. Those are, so to speak, overstays, and that would include people who never had permission in the first place. But they're people who unlawfully entered and are now unlawfully present. And those are nicer ways, they're true ways, they're legally accurate ways of talking about them. But at least for now, they're not as value-laden, and they're not as much of a foil for someone else's agenda. They're my agenda, and my agenda is communication with my clients in a way that's supportive, communicative, and efficient. Now let's see. Undocumented. Now that's kind of an inverse. It's not really a smear, and in fact, it was intended as a nice way of talking about the fact that someone, that would probably be someone who entered without permission, so they're an unlawful entrant who's now unlawfully present in the United States. They don't have any documents authorizing their presence, but they are here. Undocumented, I think, started out as a nice way of talking about that reality. That's not a legal term. Although if you use that term in immigration court, people would understand what you mean. It's not a legal term. It's not used by the USCIS. It's not used in cases that I've seen. I mean, maybe there's some new cases now that that term has become more common. But undocumented can be triggering or impair communication efficiency with clients in the opposite way. And that is, there are people that I talk to that hear the term undocumented and they hear, oh, why is he talking in euphemisms? I'll commonly get, you mean illegal alien? Well, yeah, that could be the same thing, but I'm choosing my words carefully because I have a job to do, and that job doesn't necessarily involve, and in fact, to some large extent, involves supporting my client in a way that doesn't hurt their feelings. Now, that may hurt other people's feelings or irritate other people. There's certainly no intention to do that either, but given the choice of confusing or upsetting a client versus a non-client, I'll send the non-client flowers because I have a job here. Let's see. Now, the green card marriage, right? We've seen the movies. Some of them are semi-romantic. There was that little clip of Will and Grace in the earlier segment, the famous green card marriage. But that was a highly publicized thing and perhaps encouraged people to do that. It's a crime. You can't have fake marriages, and the service has ways of catching that. But it's a pretty nasty thing to do. You don't know what goes on in anybody else's home, and to slur a couple where one couple's a citizen and the other is not, to slur their marriage by calling it a green card marriage, that's uncalled for. And it's done a lot. I mean, I hear that all the time. Oh, it's a green card marriage. He's in a green card marriage with a girl from blah, 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 or, so on. I don't think that that's valuable, and I think it presumes an almost ESP ability on the person making the slur. Now, if you know that someone's in a sham marriage, a not real marriage that's entered into only for the purpose of getting a green card, well, that's a crime. I don't know that you have any legal duty to report it, but you certainly shouldn't be helping people get over on the immigration authorities. Let's see, the next one is admissible. Now, that is an interesting term. Most people are admissible to the United States, but there are people who are inadmissible, and those are people that have or are within categories set forth in the Immigration and Nationality Act in Section 212. There are, I think, 8 categories of inadmissibility. I'm not going to go into all of them, but some big ones are what are called health grounds. People with serious health problems, for example, a communicable disease, and I use the example of tuberculosis, they can't be admitted in the United States. If immigration knows that you have tuberculosis, if it's revealed on an immigration medical examination, they're not going to let you in the United States. And if you're already in the United States and you have tuberculosis, they're not going to let you adjust status to any other status. When your status expires, you won't be able to adjust to anything else. You'll have to go home, and you won't be allowed back in the United States until you cure your tuberculosis. Similarly, if you could cure it while you were still in the United States, you would become admissible again. So that's a pretty easy one, that health ground. Health grounds also includes drug and alcohol addiction, interestingly enough. And if you look at the new public charge rules, they try and expand health grounds even to things that are not communicable, but will require enormous amounts of public funds to treat. In an earlier live I gave, and this is under the new rules that start on October 15th, it is held strongly against an intending immigrant if he or she has a health condition that, it doesn't even have to be a communicable. Like I use the example of cancer. That's not catching, as far as we know. But if you were trying to get a green card to come in the United States as the spouse of an American citizen, and you had cancer and you didn't have adequate personal funds or insurance to pay for it yourself, you would be inadmissible. And that's not a health ground, inadmissibility. It's not a danger that will catch cancer from you, at least, again, as far as we know. But it is a public charge ground, because once you get in the United States, the only way you're going to be able to pay for medical treatment for that cancer is by using public funds. Again, because you weren't able to demonstrate any other way of those things getting paid for. And presumably, you don't have a death wish and would avoid treatment. But admissibility, there's other grounds. People who have done horrible crimes, murderers, are inadmissible. People who've lied to immigration authorities in the past, they're permanently inadmissible. People who've overstayed authorized presence in the United States, those are overstays. If you overstay for more than 180 days, you're inadmissible for 3 years. Once you leave, you're not allowed back in the United States for 3 years. If you overstay for more than a year, you're inadmissible for 10 years. Again, if you're in one of those positions, there are ways of getting you out of those bars. It's called a waiver. You call my office, 412-586-4131, or my WhatsApp, 412-973-3442. But the grounds for inadmissibility, I've gone on for them for a minute, probably more than I need to. I'm just talking about the loaded nature of inadmissible, unadmitted, that this person is somehow beneath us. It seems like there's a value judgment. There's incorporated values and judgments that probably were not even intended originally, but have just grown around these terms through things like the movies and public perception that I showed in the earlier part of this video. And I encourage you all to be a little bit more mindful of this if you can when using them. Certainly, I've got to keep the two vocabularies going, and not everybody can do that. I understand that, but and also understand that people who use precise terms that may be hurtful are probably aware of it and don't mind. Or not that they don't mind; they actually don't mean it. I have to refer to my own client as an alien sometimes, maybe in an immigration court. That isn't me doing that to hurt their feelings, although I know it might. It's just required to communicate effectively with other lawyers in the court system. And the last one that always kind of grated on me is qualified sponsor. When a citizen marries a foreign citizen, that foreign citizen has to prove that they're not going to become a public charge. Public charge is a ground of inadmissibility. So if the government anticipates that you're not going to be able to get around in the United States without using public benefits, they can declare you likely to become a public charge, and on those grounds refuse to grant you immigration benefits. Now, in another live, I talked about the new public charge rules. They're taking effect on October 15th. But the public charge ground of inadmissibility always existed. And generally, if you married someone from overseas, you have to prove your ability to support your non-citizen spouse in the United States. And the reason you have to do that is because it helps them overcome any suspicion that they might become a public charge. So you have to be quote unquote qualified as a sponsor to bring your husband or wife into the United States to live with you. And that really, that gets into a whole bunch of things, right? I mean, it creates a situation where, what do you mean I'm not qualified to take care of my own wife? Or even some people are qualified and some people aren't, and it's money. But I don't know, there may be, I don't have a better term right here. I mean, it's just something that grated on me. I thought the idea of qualified versus unqualified, again, could be hurtful. It's exclusionary. There's a value judgment there. Not qualified in our language and in the modern area. He's in a position he's not qualified for. That person is not saying something nice there. So there you go. And so that's my thought about all those things. These terms, again, can be hurtful. They're not necessary, and they impair communication between attorney and client. Where I could, I gave you some examples of how they became to be hurtful, even though they probably weren't intended that way, and maybe even some options that you could take to use different terminology that reflects the same legal or even just factual reality that doesn't necessarily incorporate all those value judgments and cast aspersions and smears and things of that nature. Again, this is Joe Murphy. I'm a lawyer with Allegheny Immigration Group. My practice is primarily humanitarian and family-based immigration. Our office in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We practice all over the United States. We just got a case today from Miami. Might have to go down and see the client. But if you have any immigration questions, I'm here for you. You can, again, call or text me on WhatsApp 412-973-3442. Especially on the weekends, because the office phones go right to voicemail on the weekend. It's just the way the computer system's set up. And remember, we have that special on the legal work involved in immigration through marriage. Our fee would be $1,000 for that, which is a really, really good fee on that. Of course, there's some significant filing fees to the government. That's not included in our fee. I think those run $1,760, and then there's also a medical exam for the foreign spouse on top of that, so you'd have to think about that. But we've cut our fees down, and we're trying to get as many people as we can in under the wire before the new rules take effect. So if you're in a position to take us up on that, we can even take $500 down to give you even more inducement to file now. That ought to tell you something that we're reaching out, because we think it's going to get significantly harder for people. But I do thank you for your attention, and keep tuned for future videos. All right, bye-bye.